Hey there, as a Latter-day Lights listener, I want to give you a very special gift today. My brand new book, Faith to Stay. This book is filled with inspiring stories, powerful discoveries, and even fresh insights to help strengthen your faith during the storms of life. So, if you're looking to be inspired, uplifted, and spiritually recharged, just visit faithtostay.com. Now, let's get back to the show. Hey everyone, I'm Scott Brandley.
And I'm Alicia Coakley. Every member of the church has a story to share, one that can instill faith, invite growth, and inspire others.
On today's episode, we're going to hear how facing imposter syndrome is fueling one woman's passion to inspire others to rise above self-doubt and walk confidently in their divine destiny. Welcome to Latter-day Lights. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Latter-day Lights. We're so glad you're here with us today, and we're really excited to introduce our special guest, Cassidy Beck, to the show. Welcome, Cassidy.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thanks, Alicia, for having me.
Yeah, of course. We always love being able to collaborate with fellow podcasters. It's like, oh, you're not nervous at all. We're totally fine.
Let's stick with that. I am a little bit nervous. I think my role is totally different. So I have done a whole lot of interviews, but this is my very first on this side of it. So I am excited. I'm very excited to be here.
Good. I always tell my kids the only difference between fear and excitement is the meaning that you give to the feeling that you're having. So you can still get the butterflies in your stomach and the sweaty palms and the elevated heart rate and all of those physical feelings are exactly the same. So just go with excitement. You're excited. You're not scared.
That's right. I love it.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, Cassidy, why don't you take a second to tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Great. So my name is Cassidy Beck. As Alicia mentioned before, I am a podcaster, and it was really fun. I had the opportunity to speak with both Scott and Alicia before on my podcast. And I feel like there were a lot of things I really connected with you and just wanted to further the conversation. So I've spent the majority of my life living in Utah. Just a little bit over 2 years ago, my husband and myself and our 3 kids moved to Meridian, Idaho. And it was quite a time of transition for me because we knew one person, we knew one family in the entire state. And in addition to that, trying to come in and get settled, my youngest daughter, it was going into the first grade. And for what that meant to us was that this was the first time that she had been in all day kindergarten, that she had been in school all day. Mm-hmm. All of my kids were in school all day. And so it was interesting because I had all of these questions of who am I and what is my purpose? And I had more time to kind of stew in it. And so I feel like a lot of times as Latter-day Saints, we are a purpose-driven people and we need to fill that purpose. And there are a lot of times that we're in transition. And I feel like when you were on my show, that was one of the things that came up then with each of you going through different transitions. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that self-doubt and imposter syndrome and fear that kind of motivates both the podcast and a lot of my writing.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
I love that. Well, I think we just get to it then. How's that sound? You want to go ahead and tell us where your story all begins?
Let's do it.
Okay.
So, the story starts with my dad. He woke up one day, he had a pain in his back, and we didn't know at the time, but what was happening, he had an infection in his spine that was deteriorating the discs in his spinal cord, and it was so aggressive that he had bone on bone in his spinal column. And so there was a period of time that was very difficult where he was totally immobile. And kind of during that time, I had noticed a little bit of a trend. And that was when my family went to go visit my parents, there was just kind of a natural gravitation that would happen. And I would go just kind of chat with my mom. Meanwhile, my husband would plop down next to my dad and kind of just talk with him. And I was talking with my oldest sister, and I had wanted to do something. I wanted to engage with him in a meaningful way that would kind of, I guess, disrupt this natural rhythm that we had gotten into.
Mhm.
And he was able to get surgery on his spine, and so that he was able to get his independence and some mobility back. And during that time, it was about a year, I interviewed him and I worked with him to write his life story. We talked about his childhood. We talked about going through high school. He is a very successful businessman. We talked about his success in business, and we talked about his relationships. So he was 78 years old, and that time where he was not able to move really took a toll. And he passed away before we could finish the book. And
Mhm.
at that time, there were two things that were there, like that I knew immediately. Um, the first thing was that his story needed to be shared. I had to finish it. And the second thing that I knew was it felt impossible to do it without him.
Mhm.
Um, I would sit at the computer and I would just weep. It is very hard to write as you can't see anything on the screen. And
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't experienced writer's block before,
Mm.
but that was just, it was just a solid cement wall that nothing could come on the page for it. And it was interesting because I felt such pressure. At that moment, my youngest was 3, and I felt like this was the way that she was going to know her grandpa. And so it was like really, really important that his story mattered, and it was really important that I write it down. So this is where Walter comes in. Now, who is Walter? Walter is a fictitious character, someone that I completely made up. He was really easy to write about because there was like no attachment to him, right? And so it was
Mm.
very easy to write about him. And so that is where I started. And it was interesting just being able to write. There was turned out to be kind of a heavy story, but it helped me process my feelings in such a way that I could return to write about my dad. And that was the more important story. And I did finish his work, and I did it in a way that I am one of 6. There are 6 of us. So I included, all of us spoke at his funeral, and I included all of my siblings' funeral talk, so you could get the most important thing to my father were his relationships. And I think that it was a way that you could see more about the relationships that really mattered to him. So I finished this. This is my dad's story. And it just really solidified more for me that stories matter. I also finished Walter's story, which is this one. And again, I think stories matter. And I thought like writing these that would kind of help silence my self-doubt that I have been experiencing and these feelings of imposter syndrome. But it did not. And I think what helped a little bit through that was figuring out the purpose of these books. Like, what was their purpose? A lot of times as an author, I kind of sometimes daydream. Scott, I know you're an author. Alicia, I know you're an author as well.
Yep.
It's just something that you guys experience as well, like the daydreams that kind of happen in the background. Right. And so you kind of think like, wouldn't it be awesome to land on a best-selling list? And these books were never intended for that. And I think I had to kind of go through a little bit of a process about understanding what success meant and what their purpose was. There's a line in the scriptures and in the temple that every living thing shall fulfill the measure of its creation. My question is, do you think that that could also be applied to the works of our hands? And my answer to that question is yes, I do. I think that we can figure out what the measure, like to have our things fill the measure of their creations. And I think that each of those books filled the measure of their creations. It was never about how many were going to be sold. My dad's book was about preserving his voice and his legacy. And I would also add that writing a book certainly isn't the only way to do it, but that's what resonated and how I wanted to do it. I think each of my siblings has tried to preserve his legacy and his voice in different ways as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that Walter's story was more about coming through a difficult time and about moving through grief and mourning. Mm-hmm. So I really liked, I've listened to a couple of your podcast episodes. I really liked, I can't remember her name, but the Australian woman that came on just recently. Yeah. And I like the quote that she said. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but she said that like the gospel isn't a magic wand that just like suddenly takes away all of the things. Mm-hmm. And I think, we need to find different ways that we are able to navigate through the trials of our life. So soon after my father's passing, I was camping with my extended family, and we have a sheep ranch that's been in our family for generations. And that's where we were camping. We were all around the campfire and we were talking about kind of next steps. I knew that I had wanted to be an author and had been working on different things. And we were just kind of brainstorming. My brother-in-law told me about this study. I thought it was really interesting. Is the idea of quantity versus quality. Mm-hmm. Do you guys know the study I'm talking about? So it's kind of interesting because it has morphed a little bit, but the original experiment, it was about photography. It was conducted at the University of Florida, and he split the groups into two, and the quantity was just going to be graded solely on the number of photos that they produced, whereas the quality had to produce one perfect photo. Mm-hmm. And the result was that, surprisingly, the quantity group produced what they were able to produce was way better than the quality, because they learned from their mistakes. They kept moving, they kept growing, they kept getting better. Whereas the quality people were more like theorizing about what would make a perfect composition. So later, that kind of same thing has been retold in pottery. It was from the book, The Art and Fear, but they changed the study into pottery, with the versions kind of being the same. So anyway, I decided to write 5 versions of a book, and it was about sheep. I think I was kind of just inspired by the setting. And so I wrote 5 different versions. I wrote a sheep telling you about personal hygiene, a sheep teaching about vanity and overcoming vanity, a sheep telling you about ADHD and overcoming fear, and finally a sheep that found the Good Shepherd. The idea of using a sheep to teach kids to come to the Good Shepherd just hit on a totally different vibration than the others. And so I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. I think this is something that both of you can relate to. It's been 6 years and in the making, and it has finally come to fruition. I'm very excited about it. In the meantime, during those 6 years, I had pitched the idea to 4 different publishers, and each of them really loved the idea. They were enthusiastic about it. They asked for a full manuscript. if there's an author that has gone through that, that is a very exciting prospect of having a publisher like ask for your full manuscript. That's just very exciting. All of them passed. They did not approve of it, and they said good luck and no thank you. But this story was like written on my heart, and it was something that I couldn't let go. There was one particular rejection that stung pretty harshly. And to tell you a little about it. So the story it's called The Sheep Chronicles. It's a children's picture book, but it's written in the style of comics. And this person had told me a little bit more about it. So Joshua is about to get baptized, and he's feeling a little bit nervous. I think the thing that's a little bit tricky with like going through the temple for the first time or with getting baptized, there isn't a way to like, you can learn, you can study, and you can go to classes, you can do all of these things, but experiencing it yourself is just different. And you can't go through it until you're there doing it for the first time. There just isn't a way to experience it other than going through it. And so I wrote this story as a way to kind of like ease people's anxiety about baptism. And the feedback I got from this particular publisher was the rules of comics are that superhero vibes. The kids are here for the superheroes. And so I was sitting with that. And so that was basically a full rewrite. And I went to my mom's house, and I mentioned we had this sheep ranch in our family. And so a lot of I guess sheep paraphernalia have been given to my parents over the years. So, but to go back a little bit, so imposter syndrome for me, imposterism and those kind of thoughts, for me, what that sounds like to myself is, who am I to write this? Like, who am I that people would listen? And like, because I don't have a PhD. And I don't have like a super high calling in the church or anything. And I don't have 1 million followers on YouTube or Instagram. And I was on TikTok, but I'm not anymore. And so kind of like, what am I doing? And who am I pretending to be? And I, had these things and especially where, this feedback was, well, these are the rules and you're not following the rules. And so you don't really know what you're doing. I had all of those in my mind, and I was as I was going through my parents' house, there was this wall. They had gone to put all of the sheep in a collection together, and I was just sitting there looking at it, and it was like, this is a story I was born to tell. And it was interesting because I think there was a moment, my daughter has recently, my youngest is now 8. She was baptized last January, and I was reading through some drafts with her, and we had such a beautiful moment where there was Joshua goes and he brings his questions. There was a conference talk that President Nelson had. I cannot remember the exact time or the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, I wish all of you were my grandkids. And so Joshua goes to his grandpa, and his grandpa kind of has that President Nelson-esque vibe of a very loving, tender, knowledgeable man. And Joshua brings his questions, and his grandpa is patient and kind and understanding, and breaks down baptism using a parable of sheep to tell the story about why and how we're baptized. And he also encourages Joshua to remember the feelings that he had. Now, my daughter her feelings were very upset, and she came down excited. She came into my office and was like, "Mom, I remembered." She said that she went into her closet and there was I can't even remember the situation. She was probably fighting with her siblings. Anyway, that she was upset about, and she remembered the feelings that she had from her baptism, and it helped her come to a place of peace and comfort. And I thought, okay, that's maybe this has filled the measure of its creation and we're done. But then I got thinking about the other families that have 8-year-olds that might also want to have that type of scenario play out in their homes. And so I hope that I find one. But I would say that our stories matter. Like my dad's story really mattered, and not just the ones that we share with other people, but the ones that we tell in our minds, the ones that we are saying to ourselves. And I think that there's a quote that I really like. It was actually when I went to the illustrator and I talked to him about what the publisher had said, and he said, "Well, okay, just because you heard something doesn't make it true." And he had asked that we go talk to kids and see what they feel about this book. And I think that there are children that do resonate with that superhero. They have that inner strength and they're just ready to take on the world. And that is awesome. And I do think that there are still things, hopefully, that they can learn from the book. But I think that could possibly be more of an exception than the rule for kids. I think it is a little bit more difficult to do something, like I had mentioned before. It's difficult when you're asked kids to do something. And I feel like we ask them to do new things all the time, whether it's like going into a class for the first time or trying a different like swimming lessons or soccer, whatever. We're asking them and encouraging them, or their new primary class, like every January, they're finding and meeting new teachers, and we are asking them to broaden their horizons quite a bit. Anyway, I started this. I also had this podcast, and I think that I, like you, feel like these our stories matter. And these ideas of faith and determination and what kind of gets people through their difficult times are really important. And I also do life coaching because I think that those stories that we tell ourselves need to be examined. Because just because you think something or that you have heard something doesn't make it true. Right. I'm teaching a class this year at LDS PMA, and the class is I Am Who God Says That I Am, Faith's Answer to Imposter Syndrome, Self-Doubt, and Rejection Fatigue. So with rejection fatigue, I sort of dabble a little bit in different things, and I found myself talking to a group of salespeople and, asking them if they had experienced rejection fatigue. And as you can imagine, that is something that is very well experienced through sales. And also I was thinking about our missionaries, that we are asking our missionaries all the time to knock on doors and to ask people and to share the gospel and the good news with people that don't necessarily want to hear it. There are some that do, and I mean that's like the payday, right? But you have to go through a lot to find the one. And I think that grounding yourself in the knowledge that you are who God says that you are is Faith's answer to self-doubt and to imposter syndrome and to rejection fatigue. And that's all I got.
Wow. Okay. So why did you write 5 versions or 5 different stories? What was the What was the impetus for the 5?
So that was inspired by my brother-in-law's, that whole idea of the quantity versus quality, right? I wanted to write I wanted to write a really good quality book, but I thought I was going to get there by writing a quantity. And it was actually really interesting because as I was preparing for this, I went back and looked at those originals, and it has improved significantly.
Nice.
So what was the end result? Did you put them all 5 stories together, or did you come up with one grand story? Or
so this is the one grand story. It is called Sheep Chronicles Baptism. So it just came out in September. It actually is also available in Spanish.
Nice.
I think I did that because, and I just listened to General Conference, and one of the things that struck me about this General Conference, possibly more than others, is the different accents, and I loved it. I thought it was so wonderful that we are a worldwide religion, and I think we are seeing that more and more. And this was like my small nod of, yes, we are a worldwide religion. I want to add voices to the table. So it's called Sheep Chronicles. The first one is baptism. It is difficult to talk about baptism without talking about the Holy Ghost. But I think that needs a whole book in itself. And it was interesting. I got into some interesting conversations about this because I also think it's difficult to separate baptism from repentance, because those are so entwined. However, as an 8-year-olds, like, children are spotless before God. And so it didn't feel totally right to write a story about baptism as a call to repentance for children. And so the idea is the Sheep Chronicles is going to be made up of baptism. Joshua is going to come to his grandfather in another book, in the second book, and learn more about the Holy Ghost. And in the third book, he's going to learn more about partaking of the sacrament. And that felt more of the repentance piece and how those all together work together.
Nice. So I want to go back to when you the scripture that you were sharing about how everything will fulfill its measure of creation, right? Like, can you repeat that again for us?
Yes. So I actually, I know it is scriptorial. It struck me, is kind of interesting. I was just having a conversation yesterday about how the temple is the Lord's university. And, it doesn't change when you go. Like, the things are the same. However, we change, right? Because the experiences that we have, the things that we're thinking about as we're bringing to the temple change. And so there was a line in the temple that says that, that you shall fulfill the measure of its creation. And it was there that I was like, oh, okay, I need to be very clear about what I am defining as success, or defining as a measure of one's, like, not just my books, but of mine. Because going back to, like, where are my people? I think it was interesting because, I had mentioned the move and how big it was of a transition. My husband was able to kind of like find his people almost immediately with his new job. And my kids, as they started school, as they got involved with sports, were able to find their people. And that question is interesting because I've also had a good conversation about like in church being heard and seen, but also what that looks like, like using service as a way to get to know people, and also realizing that, especially after COVID, I think a lot of people really want to be connected. And so I did try and find different ways to connect group of people. And I also found pickleball Do you guys play pickleball?
Yes.
That is another way to find people, because pickleball community and a group of friends that I have specifically are like phenomenal.
That's awesome. Well, just to kind of go back a little bit to the fulfilling your measure of creation, I really loved what you said there, because I think that especially as creative people, whether you're someone who's producing music, you're writing books, you're an entrepreneur and you're building a business, like people in that space of creation, they tend to, and I know I'm super guilty of this, think so big, right? That we kind of forget that sometimes that might not be the Lord's plan, right? Like maybe bits and pieces of it are, or maybe he wants you to get medium, or maybe he just wants you to stay small for a little while because he's got something else, that he's going to take you to. And so I think that I appreciated you bringing that up, because I know for me, I'm going on, it'll be almost 7 years, so 6.5 years right now since I started my book. And it's just been sitting dormant for about a year now, where I only have a couple chapters I have to finish. That's it. And it's beyond writer's block. It's like there is nothing going on in my head, and everything that I had planned does not feel right anymore. And so it feels like I'm waiting for the Lord to give me direction on how to end this, because my original plan is not how he wants me to end it. And what I'm thinking of right now doesn't also feel like maybe the right way to do it. And so now I'm like, well, what are we doing here? And with you saying that, I'm like, is that one of those things where maybe I was only supposed to go to that point for, I mean, hopefully not forever, but like, was it because it needed to get me through the first 5 years after losing my brother? Did it need to, did it have a different purpose? Did it have a different reason for the creation of it, that maybe I have already fulfilled what needed to be fulfilled? So now anything extra is just extra, right? And maybe is that why my brain is blank, or my motivation is gone, or whatever it is. I don't know. I hope not, because I really want to have a finished book so badly. But I think it's interesting, because I just had this conversation with my son today, my almost 19-year-old. He is just putting so much pressure on himself to figure out like what exactly he needs to do with his life. And I'm like, dude, you're not even 19. Like, chill. you're going to just do something. Like, just do something, like he has been wanting to go on a mission, but then he was kind of like, I don't know. And then he talks about going in the military, and then he talks about going to college, and he's just kind of all over the place. And he just feels like he is stuck in indecision. And I kind of kept having to tell him today, especially, I was like, dude, like, just do something. Just do something. Like, you don't have to assume that what you're doing needs to be done perfectly or for the next 40 years of your life or whatever. It's just, sometimes it'll be the thing that leads to the next thing, and I think that's kind of what you were talking about with quantity over quality too, right? Like that whole, like, sometimes it's just exercise. Sometimes it's just to open one little door. Sometimes it's just to help you to overcome your imposter syndrome, or to help you meet someone who's going to give you an idea or give you direction or be a sounding board for you. Right. So that to me is really interesting. I do have a question about, you brought up imposter syndrome a lot. Do you feel like in doing these books and in the last few years that you've been writing, do you feel like that is lessening for you? Like that feeling of imposter syndrome, or is it something that you're still struggling with? And how are you helping other people to overcome what they're experiencing?
I have so many thoughts, and I love the question, and I love your thoughts as well. And I would say one thing I wanted to add to what I was saying before, because like, okay, it was that moment in the temple that hit me with the feeling the measure of its creation, and I was like, okay, let's learn a little bit more about that. And there is a talk. It was BYU speeches by Sister Holland that goes into depth about that too. And so if that's something you're interested in, I would recommend doing that. And I think as entrepreneurs, Alicia, and both Alicia and Scott, you guys can do this, like relate to this as well. My dad was an entrepreneur. And I interview a lot of entrepreneurs as well. And I think that there's just this thing, like becoming an entrepreneur, you have to be okay with a little bit of risk. And you have to be okay with like not knowing, because you're never going to know all the things that you need to know. And that's how we kind of like grow. And you just have to know like a little bit to get to the next step. And I think that is a little bit of a part of imposter syndrome. So to answer that question, Alicia, it is something that it is a voice in my head that I'm very familiar with. It is something that is pretty constant. And I think, I don't know if it is for other people as well. I feel like every guest, there's been, I think maybe one exception that did not know what I was talking about when I said the imposter syndrome. It is a very common phenomenon. I think especially as creatives, I think we get a little bit of dose of imposter syndrome. I also think like possibly as Latter-day Saints, because we are such a purpose-driven people, that I think that might come with, I was just talking again about the temple with a friend, and she had said, I think, once I get everything like figured out, then I'm going to go. And that's like one of those things that like, if we waited for perfection, like none of us would ever go to church. None of us would ever partake of the sacrament. None of us would ever go to the temple. And there's I again really like imposter syndrome. I feel like I've done a lot of research of it. There's I think it's like 5 different kind of ways that imposter syndrome manifests. And one of them is like perfectionism. And that like once things are totally perfect, then I'm going to move forward. And that time will never come, because they're like, you'll never be able to totally figure out, because none of us can tell the future or like what's going to happen. And so anyway, those are a couple of my thoughts. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
I've got some thoughts. This is actually a really interesting topic. So I love the idea of filling the measure of your creation. I mean, all 3 of us are creators on the podcast here, right? And I'm thinking about my career in business, just as an example, as you've been talking. So I've built over 40 different software products over my career.
Wow.
And I've only had 3 that have been successful, right? So, and one of them was really successful. Then one was kind of successful and one was okay. The rest of them, nothing happened. But if I wouldn't have built the 37 other products, I wouldn't have had those 3 successful products.
Right.
And you have to take the risk, like you were saying, Cassidy. You have to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. I love the idea of quantity over quality, because that does give you those opportunities to fail forward. As long as you keep going, you can learn from the things that you've done, and you can do better on the next one and better on the next one. And you don't know which one is going to be the big thing that has the big impact, right? So there's that side of it. But then I was also thinking from a personal perspective, the measure of our creation, we can impact other people, but us creating actually helps us.
Right.
And if the worth of a soul is great in the sight of God, and our soul is incredibly valuable, and as we create, we actually get, especially with like church related things, right? We become closer to God, whether anybody reads our book or listens to our music or whatever it is that we create on the church side, we get converted and become closer to him. Like it took me 9 years to finish my book. And there was a lot. I mean, you guys know, like it's grueling sometimes, right? Because you're like, you'll sit at the computer and you'll write something for hours and then you'll be like, oh, that's not right.
Yeah.
That was a total waste.
Or you read it the next day and you're like, what was I thinking? Yeah.
But it's the process. It's the process. And to your sorry, I got one more thought. To your idea of imposter syndrome. So I've built 40 different software products. I've started well over a dozen different companies, and I'm building a new one right now. We talked about this before the show a little bit, but I still have that imposter syndrome. Like, what if people don't like it? What if it fails, right? Am I crazy? Why am I doing this again, right? Yeah. I still have it. And I've built lots of different companies, but it's that there's always that thing that just gets at you, and you just got to push it down and just keep going. I don't know if you can ever get over it completely, but I'm able to cope with it now a lot better than I did when I was younger. And maybe that's just the best we can do, is just it gets smaller over time as we keep taking those risks and push forward. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. So Scott, I love it. Thank you for both of your ideas. So starting with the creation one, yes, absolutely. I think it is kind of interesting because we believe that God created, with his son, Jesus Christ, created the world, created all of us. And so I believe that creation is a part of our DNA.
Yeah, for sure.
Literally, right? Like, because we're also called to
multiply and replenish the earth.
There we go. Thank you. Yes. Yes, that's what exactly.
And not just with babies.
Yes. But not just with babies, but also to create. And to take care of the world around us, and to look out for each other, and also to create. And I think that is definitely true. And I think along those lines, I was thinking, I think there's a beautiful idea that you were trying to reach the one. And I think that came from Christ, that was just wanted the one. And through this, I have thought, but what if I'm the one? What if all of this is just to make me a slightly better person? Okay. Hopefully I am helping others along the way. Hopefully my life is one of service, but also I feel like certainly I am being impacted. Okay. So to talk about imposter syndrome, I really like it. If that's something that any listeners are interested in, these are two books that I would really recommend. So this is The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women and Men, Why Capable People Suffer from Imposter Syndrome and How to Thrive in Spite of It. And Jill Stoddard, who's a PhD, wrote Imposter Syndrome No More, Overcome Self-Doubt and Imposterism to Cultivate a Successful Career. I actually had the opportunity of interviewing Jill Stoddard. It was very cool.
Cool.
It was really cool. So anyway, one of the things that she says that I really like, and this is to your point, Scott, that you have done all of these incredible things. Like, you've made a lot of stuff where you know what you're doing. And also that there's that voice that's like, but do you really? I have a whole theory about this. If we can get to it if we have time. But one of what she says is that can serve as a neon sign to you to show you what's important. And when those imposter thoughts come up, that is yourself telling, like, your kind of protective self saying, this is really important that I get this right. And I think, Scott, like if you've developed this many software programs, it seems like software is pretty important to you.
Yeah. Well, helping people. I mean, I build software to help people, right? To be more successful. So, yeah. And I feel like another cool thing, I call it the singularity. This is kind of something weird, but over time, Cassidy, this is the craziest thing. As I've been moving in my career and building things, it feels like, well, we could probably say God on this podcast, but a lot of times in business, we say the universe, right? It's felt like things have been put in front of me more and more as I go further down the path. And in fact, it's happened so much in the last few years that it feels like it's coming to a point. And so I've actually called it the singularity, and I call that in my office because it's happened so frequently that things just serendipitously come out of the woodwork to make what we're building possible. And when I look back, I'm like, how did all those things happen? Just coincidentally. I don't understand how it could happen without me taking the steps in faith, even through the fear, but then just pushing forward. And then God just kind of puts things in your path to make it happen. That's something that's really cool that's happened so often that I actually created a name for it.
Yes, I love that. So if I can add to that, yes, I totally agree. So it was really cool. I just recently went to 2 weeks with my husband to Italy. It's been like a lifelong dream, and it just happened, and it was amazing.
Nice.
I got to see the Sistine Chapel. It was really cool. I actually got to be in a crowd when the new Pope came out. It was so cool. But the thing that I wanted to share with you was seeing Michelangelo's David, and the way that they had it kind of like the showcase of it is they had several statues that are unfinished, like the unfinished prisoners. And so you just see this like slab of stone, and there is a slab of stone, marble. It's beautiful, but it's just bleh. And you can see as he is finishing, you can see like there's one that he was like working on the leg, and you can see the little chisel marks. And to go kind of like to the slow progressions of these different not characters, but different features, different people that have come out. And Michelangelo is quoted as saying that it is God that shows him like what needs to be taken away and what is in there. And it is so incredible to see the transition of how it just went from this slab to a masterpiece. To refined, beautiful, delicate, like you can see the veins in his hands, you can see like his strength, you can see his determination, and it just is truly a masterpiece. And I feel like that's also what you're saying, Scott, that God is working through you to also uncover these things so that you can create your measure of the thing that you're working on to fill that's measure of its creation.
Yeah. Well, that kind of gives me another thought. As we create turn ourselves into a masterpiece.
Yeah. How do you not be afraid of imposter syndrome? How do you take it and use it for good? Because we know that everything can be used for good. So how do we do that?
Yes. So I feel like I hear you saying, Alicia, that like we're categorizing imposter syndrome as a negative, but what if it is there to help us?
Yeah.
So again, one of the things that I really like this book, in the interview that I had with Jill, she talked about how she named that imposter voice that she heard. She named it Sheila. And, she would kind of like talk back to Sheila and she would say, you are trying to protect me, because I don't think like any of us want to feel stupid, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't want to feel like a failure, or we don't want to, like, if this is something that's really important to us, we want to show, like, we want to represent ourselves in the best way that we can.
Mhm.
So I do want to clarify one thing here, because I did have someone say, I don't experience imposter syndrome because I don't ever try and pretend to be someone that I'm not. And that is not imposter syndrome. I feel like imposter syndrome is just that tiny voice in your head that says, like, who do you kind of think that you are? Other things that it could possibly say. Have you guys seen K-pop Demon Hunters?
I've not. I've heard
Oh, yeah.
so much about it.
Alicia,
I
it's
know.
good.
Come on, Alicia.
I'm too busy to watch TV. I'm so sorry.
Okay, no worries. But from that show, those the kind of ideas, I actually think it does talk about imposter syndrome without talking about imposter syndrome. But the main characters deal with these ideas of, I'm too much, I'm not enough, and what if people like knew the real me, then they wouldn't accept me. And I think those are more kind of the voices that imposter syndrome might make. And so, yes, I do think like it can help us prepare ourselves in a way that we can become our most authentic self, or that we can like write a book 5 times, or wait 6 years until it's like we have it at a point that we're like really comfortable with.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah. Well, and these kind of conversations are good for even for us to listen to together, right? Because we need that reassurance that when we do feel that we're not enough, that it's okay to keep pushing, because that's how we get to the next level. That's how we become strong. We have to go through the trials to become stronger.
yeah.
And imposter syndrome is a trial that I think we have to overcome along the way. It's just one of those things. It's just like fear or self-doubt. Like you've got to overcome those things in order to become stronger over time.
Mhm.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go away.
Right.
Like I said, I still have it. And there's days even now where I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Am I crazy? Like, and I've done this for my whole career. So I still get it. That's been 25 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I wasn't going to go here, but I want to now. So, I had mentioned before that I had like a theory, and this is kind of my theory about imposter syndrome. I don't think it's by accident. I think it's one of the great deceiver's most potent tools that he uses against us. And why I think that is, I feel like in scripture, we actually kind of see it in Moses. So, in Moses 1, we read that Moses has an incredible transformative experience with God. He's able to see him face to face. And then Moses says, I'm not going to get the quote exactly right. No, Satan, after this, Satan comes to Moses and says, Moses, son of man, just that, like he is
Right.
trying to belittle him. And in the Screw Tape letters, Wormwood, are you familiar with the Screw Tape letters? So Wormwood is a wise old devil, and he gives instructions to his nephew through letters. And in one letter, he says, as a preliminary to detaching this man from God, you need to detach him from himself. I think Satan uses imposter syndrome, self-doubt, fear, these different types of things to belittle and downplay our divine identity.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
I would agree with that.
So we just had Calvin Bagley on. Bagley, right? Is that his last name? Anyway, and he gave us like some suggestions for books that he really, really loved. And one of the books that he talked about, I can't remember which one it is. I'm gonna have to look it up. But he talked about how a lot of the times we tend to confuse like who we are with thinking that we're our body, we're our brain, we're our emotions, we're whatever. He's like, no, like we're our spirits. And so if you remember that your brain, your emotions, your trauma, your body, all those things are like different things that your spirit is kind of running, right? And instead we let our spirit just be an observer instead of like a judge or jury or executioner or that kind of stuff. And if we're having these moments like the imposter syndrome, if we're having these voices come in, it would be a good idea for us to practice kind of getting in tune with like our spirit and being like, okay, I am my spirit. So this imposter syndrome is coming from my brain, or it's coming from my trauma, or it's coming from a circumstance. Maybe the circumstance is that you're not yet a published author, or you're not yet a successful entrepreneur, or you're not yet, in this great relationship or something like that, right? So it's coming from a temporary circumstance. And if we can just take a minute to observe and just be like, oh, that's interesting, and just leave it at that. Like, we don't have to give any emotion to it. We don't, you know what I mean? Like, maybe that is a thing that helps us to move forward a little bit more, or to take it and just be like, oh, okay, you're bringing up a problem that I haven't yet solved. So how do I solve that problem? That could also be maybe another tool.
Absolutely. I think that's a great suggestion. I think that's a great idea. I like that a lot, Alicia.
Yeah, that book was The Power of Now.
Yes, there you go. Thank you, Scott. I know he suggested a few of them to us, so I couldn't remember which one was which. But
wow, this has been an interesting conversation. I didn't realize it was going to go down this path, but it's been actually really good.
Yeah,
I've loved it. Thank you.
Is there any? Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us as we kind of wrap things up? Any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone in your audience is looking for a life coach, you can find me on Sageverse Publishing. You can might have a link to my podcast there and books. And if you're interested in having the newsletter, I have a monthly newsletter as well.
perfect. And we'll be sure to put those links for everyone in the description. So easy to find.
Can they get your books at that site too?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So you can get them from that site. It is a link to Amazon.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's all there.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well,
any last words of encouragement?
Yeah.
As you've done this, have you been able to overcome some of these things in your life or get a better understanding of them?
I think so. I mean, I like what you said, Scott. I feel like it's something that is kind of interesting. One of the things that Jill said is, even if you are a published author and you have all the success, it's not going to go away because now you're going to be performing at a different level. And so I like, Alicia, what you were saying about being more comfortable with it and kind of taking a step back and asking, okay, what's the lesson here? What can I learn from this? And how can I grow in this moment? And I think being able to just keep going, I think, these feelings that we have aren't accidental. And I think the way to combat them is to recognize them and also to embrace your divine identity. I like, Alicia, what you were saying. I mean, it is it's like a primary thing, but like that you're a child of God, and knowing that and owning that identity, I think that can kind of shift your strength to rise above.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Awesome.
Well, this has been so good. I always love these ones where we get to have more of a discussion, and I feel like I walk away like knowing more. So thank you so much, Cassidy.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me join you today.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, thanks for everyone for tuning in to another episode of Latter-day Lights. If you have a story that you'd like to share, we'd love to have you on. Go to latterdaylights.com or send us an email at latterdaylights@gmail.com.
Yep, absolutely. And make sure you guys do your 5-second missionary work. Click that share button, comment on Cassidy's episode if you're listening to it, and just let her know what you think about imposter syndrome, what you struggle with, what you have found helps you. I think that would be really great to keep this conversation going in the comments. So make sure you guys do that, and be sure to tune in for another episode of Latter-day Lights next Sunday.
Till then, we'll take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I have so many. Okay, so I love it. Sorry, edit that part out. I'm back. Okay,